Welcome to Escapists Anonymous, the fantasy fiction book club. I'm Dan.
And I'm Sam. This is a podcast for people who love to read and who read to escape into worlds of magic and adventure. But don't let that adventure end when you finish your book.
Join us on Escapists Anonymous to carry on the conversation.
Dan, it's the moment of the year that everyone's been waiting for. It's the second ever Escapists Anonymous End of Year Awards 2025.
I need to do that radio thing where you insert the
Those
applause.
massive cassettes.
Yeah. I'm very excited. I've been looking forward to this basically since last December.
Yeah.
It's the only reason I kept reading throughout the year.
And it's going to be such an evolution of the first year. First year, for one, we'd read about 7 books because we were doing it like each book spread across multiple episodes. Now we're doing 1 per episode, sometimes 2 per episode.
Yeah.
So we've covered, I think, 23 books over the year.
Yes.
We finished Sunbringer, Into the City of Brass, which feels like a long time ago.
Indeed.
All the way through to now us recapping on Rivers of London and Moon over Soho. What a journey we've been on.
Yeah,
what an adventure.
absolutely.
Multiple
Absolutely.
adventures.
Yeah. I think we've had some real treats this year as well. I mean, we've also had some real challenges to get through, but yeah. I've said to myself, I'm not including the Ben Aronovich Rivers of London and Moon over Soho or Mistborn in any of my top 3s, because I think those are obviously some of my favourites and they might have an unfair advantage over some of the other books.
I think when we're going with some of the retrospectives that we've done, generally I've tried to avoid including those in any of our award categories. Yeah. We've tried to go for the new books, or at least the newish ones that neither of us have read, not the ones where we've done a recommendation to the other to review.
Yeah.
So, at least I'm hurriedly looking over at my list, being like, have I done that? No, I don't think I have, so it's fine.
You had Terry Pratchett books that you recommended to me, so the Discworld.
No Terry Pratchett is featuring in my awards lists.
Yeah.
In terms of the awards, the categories. Now, there's been a slight evolution from last year, and I think, as we were discussing before we started recording, it's going to be an evolving series of categories, very much like the early Olympics, where you'd have something like rope climbing and pistol dueling. Things will get phased out and new, more stable categories.
I mean, that still happens in the Olympics today. Skateboarding, surfing.
Exactly. Wild choices.
This is our version of the Olympics. That's what we're basically trying to say. Yeah. It's the equivalent in the book world.
Yeah. But it happens every year. So, what a treat for everybody out there. So, to run through the categories just very quickly, we're going to do best character, best world building, biggest flop, biggest surprise, best book, and then we'll finish up with kind of 2026, what's coming up.
Yeah.
We've tried to stick to the positives, I think, here, which is important. We can't really avoid the fact that there's going to be some stuff that we didn't enjoy, but we didn't want to have a bunch of categories. We're looking more for Oscars rather than Razzies here in terms of how we want to lift up the genre of fantasy rather than poop on the bits that we didn't like.
Indeed, and we've also slightly changed our approach in terms of we have removed the requirement to find a consensus between us, because we've read about, I think, 23 or 24 books this year, depending on if you count unfinished books. It's going to be difficult for us to probably agree, although we don't know each other's lists at the moment, so it's all brand new information to us as well. So maybe we will have all of the same things on the list.
Everything's just like samesies. I mean, I think we know that there are certain books that we both absolutely loved. Yeah. But then it doesn't mean that we're going to love the same elements. So if we're delving into best character and things like that, like, we might not have chosen the same one. But there's going to be some thematic similarities in some of our choices, because we know that there are some books that we've really both kind of come away from going, what a banger.
Yeah.
What an absolute tour de force of a book.
Absolutely.
And others we were like, I'm glad that's over.
I can't believe I made it through.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, shall we, without further ado, jump into category number one, which I think is a biggie, and why not start with a massive one? I think that characters are basically the most important part of any book to me. If the characters are not likable, not relatable, not three-dimensional, then for me it's an immediate sort of black mark against the book.
And we've seen in elements, just to touch upon some of the, where it doesn't work, we've seen where that's been the downfall of the book. One of the books from earlier this year, Catabasis, neither of us really enjoyed the main character. Similarly, it raised a bit of controversy when we were discussing Rivers of London, and I implied that I didn't like Detective Nightingale as much as I should have.
Yeah. I still haven't forgiven you for that.
Yeah, so. I mean, I'm amazed that we're still friends after how badly you took that.
Indeed. So, with this new approach, we each choose maybe up to 2 runners-up.
Yeah.
And then we each try and hone in on one winner. We're not going to be totally ridiculous about it. If you want to have extra honourable mentions, I'm happy for you to throw in a couple, but we won't spend too much time on them.
Yeah. So, would you like to go first and tell me one or both of your runners-up for the category of best character?
So, my first runner-up for best character for this year goes to Vega from The Devils.
Ah.
So Vega was just a very standout comic relief character, and now that I'm looking through my list, there's a little bit of a theme emerging which I hadn't spotted before. But yeah, just a sort of constant. Just a constant alternative perspective, very, very raw and primal, reflected her character as a werewolf, as this kind of animalistic approach to life that she had, both as the werewolf and as herself as the human. And yeah, just really, really brought that to life. I mean, I was torn between her and Sunny from The Devils, but I ended up leaning on the side of Vega just because I think we're quite a few months on from having read that now, and her as a character, she's really kind of stuck in my head. So that's my first runner-up.
Absolute great choice. Just to pick up on some of the things you said, I think I'd recently been playing Baldur's Gate 3. And I'd mentioned that Karlach was a very similar kind of character, this kind of like friendly comic relief, but also with this kind of really dark past that they're trying to escape. And I think that reading that book, I was like, this is like I'm being given more of that character, but like there's more rage and very much through the Abercrombie lens. Loved Vega. Excellent choice.
Fab. So give me. Yeah, I was going to say your turn.
Now it's automatically going to stir up a bit of controversy because I was expecting this one to be my kind of top character, but then I reflected and I bumped them down to runner-up. It is Kinch Narshannock from Black Tongue Thief. I thought all the way through when we were coming up to this, like Kinch is my top guy, but I mean, I'm going to go into why I loved him. Like, amazing perspective. Like, as a lead character in a novel, like, he had such a clear voice. And it wasn't just generic guy. There was a perspective, there was a point of view that came across from early days when he's hiding in that forest, all the way through to when he's escaping through a forest. No idea where that begins and ends. But
other stuff does happen.
Other stuff happens in between. There's boats and there's cities and things. But he, the way his mind was poetic, he thought about language, how he interpreted events and dealt with stuff. Like there's a cultural depth to him that made him feel so real to me. And he's one of the reasons when I'm recommending Black Tongue Thief to people, he's one of the first things I mention about why he's such a great character. So that's why he's in my top 3.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, anybody who watches that episode that where we reviewed The Black Tongue Thief, which I have right here.
Oh, beautiful. There it is. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
It's not going to be a surprise that he's aware. Yeah, that all of the elements of that book worked for me. Maybe quite controversially, he is not in my top three.
What?
Yeah, we'll see. It could end up being really controversial. Maybe I've done this more to be controversial than that. I need to.
We want the engagement, Dan.
Reflect. Yeah, exactly. We need clickbait. But that isn't a reflection of him not being good, and probably on another day he would have been in my top three as well.
I mean, I thought I was going to say his name, and you were like, "Oh, me too. He was my top." That's why I said. I was thinking because of course he's an obvious choice. All right, well, all right. Well, who's your other runner-up then?
So my other runner-up is Bartholomew from The Knight and the Moth.
Interesting. Okay, I want to hear about this. Go on.
And maybe there, where I've said that Kinch Nashanak isn't in and Bartholomew is, maybe there's a little bit of a recency bias thing going on, because we have read The Knight and the Moth quite recently, and I just found all of his intervention again. Like I said, perhaps the theme emerging is the sort of comic relief that Bartholomew brings, but also his character started off as that kind of just funny, jokey side character, and then became more and more important to the actual unraveling of the plot as we got towards the end of the book, and so it was used in a really good way. But mostly I loved it because he's this kind of really heartfelt character. Like there's no kind of halfways or half measures with him. It's like once he's loyal to you, he is so loyal, and there's something really kind of lovely about him.
Yeah, and like you say, like at first it feels like quite a kind of contrived character. It's like, why does he act like this? And the fact that the book then reveals, oh well, this is why, you're like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And it gives you that retrospective appreciation of when you think back, being like, okay, yeah. And he was a character with surprising depth. I can see why he's on your list. I can honestly say he wasn't in the running, and but he is a good one. He is a good one. I appreciate that as a choice.
Good.
Yeah.
So
my second runner-up is a double act. It's Carol and Ute from the book that held her heart, because I think they just function so well as a little kind of pairing of kind of like. Well, I mean, I guess they were kind of the comic relief in that book as well, in what was quite a dark book where you had them visit Nazis.
Yeah.
But like I was thinking back, and I was just like, I was trying to think if I wanted to put one of them in on their own, but I was like, well, no, on their own that doesn't quite work. The two of them, these kind of weird odd couple of like a giant wolf man and then this tiny little pale librarian former robot, like just a great pairing. The way they discovered stuff together. Ute so knowledgeable, Carol like incredibly intelligent, but also like everything's new to him.
Yeah,
he just lived in a library for his entire life.
It's interesting. It's a really interesting choice, and I like the way that you've bent our non-existent rules to make it work for you here. But I think I might have chosen, and I haven't, by the way, Arpix and Clovis as a potential comic relief.
Also a great choice.
From that same book, which is really strange now reflecting back on it, that there could be kind of two sets of comic relief like pairings in that trilogy, which I do not look back on and think that was a good book for laughs.
What a light-hearted read about the end of like knowledge and existence. Great point. Also would have been really good. I think they were another one that kind of, I think maybe the later book, maybe the book that held her heart, even though the stakes were at the highest, maybe it was kind of recognised that these characters, as he'd written them, as Mark Lawrence had written them there, that he needed to have a bit of light amongst all of the stuff that was going on, and he knew that he liked writing the dynamics of pairs, especially because you have a central pairing who are pretty much kept apart for the entire trilogy. Maybe it's also a nice counterpoint to have couples who go together and work together. Not that Carol and Newt were a couple in the same way that Arpix and Clovis were a very sexy couple, very focused on that. Very different motivation for the two sets of couples. Yeah. But it was nice that you could have the dynamics of people from different worlds and races coming together, and that was kind of like really rubbing it in the face of our central pairing. But that was my choice. I thought they were really nice. Yeah, they should have had more time in that novel. I would also be happy to if they turned up again, that'd be great. Yeah,
Well, I mean, really interesting choice, and certainly not one that was on my radar even slightly for this. So, but yeah, don't disagree.
Now, do you want my honourable mention before we do winners?
Yeah, go do an honourable mention.
He's too small a character, I feel, to get into the top three. But Matteo from Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. I think as someone who existed within vampiric lore, the way he controlled himself, he was like almost this kind of like example of how to live well as a vampire, how to try and live ethically as a vampire, all this kind of stuff within the time that he existed. I just keep thinking back to him and he was also a very real character rather than a perfect character because, when his boyfriend dies and he gets on a really sloppy rebound. Yeah. He's just like, oh no, well, all messed up and I have to now leave the country for forever. Yeah. But I just want to mention him because I thought he was a really good addition that kind of reflected well against the central characters.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I had a long think about Sabine. Yeah, from Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil because I really enjoyed the whole Lestat type of story arc and good honourable mention I'd say. Yeah. So do you want the Dan Award 2025 for best character goes to Dennis Knuckleyard from The Great Wen.
Oh my God, a great choice. Great choice.
He's just stuck with me all year. We read that relatively early in the year and I just loved his kind of awkward 18-year-old, kind of an adult, but doesn't feel like an adult. And he's unrequited love and all of it just really resonated with me. And I think, I'd have to also give a mention to Cobner Holbrook Smith doing the narration of the audio book and just giving him this voice that's just stuck in my head and made all of those really awkward moments really funny. So again, he's another funny character, I think, and that's probably the theme of my runners-up and my winner. Yeah. But I thought he was great, and it was just this really great execution of it by Alan Moore.
Yeah, I mean, there were some parts of Dennis Knuckleyard where, it was very much like a realistic, if kind of quite a painful perspective. Yeah, I liked him a lot. Good choice, excellent choice.
So give me your number one.
Had a brief mention in your runners-up, although it didn't make the list. It's Sonny from The Devils.
Great choice. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because when we were reading that book, there's a lot of bigger and louder characters who are in there. I mean, not necessarily Viga, but also Balthazar, and the Baron Rykard. These kind of very fun, flamboyant characters. But I've been recommending The Devils to a few people this year, and each time Sonny's one of the characters that I mention. And with a couple of them, when they've gone on to read The Devils, they've come back to me. There it is. They've come back to me and said they also love Sonny. I was like, you're right. She's a really tragic character, and her humour, that it's Viga has that darkness, but Sonny has this kind of her humour and her whole world perspective exists from just being so downtrodden that like every single thing is framed through that lens.
Yeah.
And, you know, like the fact that she just thinks she's nothing, like her jokes, and anticipates that no one will ever get her jokes. Like, but it reveals a kind of a dry humor and that kind of just reluctance to want to open up to love someone is so heartbreaking, because it's like she's so deserving of love, but she just can't quite know how to demonstrate it, you know?
Yeah.
And it takes Alex to kind of like bring it out. Bring it out of her.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, it's like that sort of comic tragedy type of, not full on tragedy, but there's like a sort of tragic comedy, I guess, is maybe the way that you would frame it. And yeah, like I said, you know, it was between her and Vega for a mention on the list, and you could make an argument for both of them. But I absolutely loved Sunny. So we have our first two winners: Dennis Knuckleyard from The Great When, thanks Alan Moore, and Joe Abercrombie's Sonny from The Devils, best characters 2025. So that brings us on to best world building.
I like this as a category because it's like with best character you can kind of reach a definition fairly quickly, but with world building it's about what you want to take out of a world, what you want to pull out of it, and like what you're expecting, what your expectations are of a particular world that you're being shown. So yeah, with that in mind, would you like me to reveal my first runner-up?
Go on.
It is the world of Shroud by Adrian Tchaikovsky in his book Shroud.
Well, shall I just throw in there that is also on my runners-up list as well?
Oh,
and
great!
We can discuss it as one rather than having the same discussion twice. So I mean, loved it. It was just something, I guess, given that we've not done a huge amount of sci-fi, it was something that felt quite different, and just like a sort of.
So alien. It was so
weird.
And
well,
different.
yeah.
Like, I mean, I
claustrophobic sort of.
Yeah, like how we saw so little of the world.
Yeah,
it felt so developed. Like everything that was off in the darkness. Like there's stuff going on. It's almost like when you're playing a video game and your character's here and you wonder what else is going off out in that world. And it felt like that. Like, okay, yeah, even though none of it's visible, he's thought about a lot of what's going to go on out there with this fascination with biology that clearly drives a lot of his writing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's, I think it's that, it really, isn't it? It's like the life forms that you encounter, but the way that we were reliant on the kind of technology within the little pod that they were in order to get any kind of understanding of what that was. Obviously we also had the perspective of the alien, albeit they're not the alien on their own planet, but the shrouded. And that's something that Adrian Tchaikovsky does in quite a lot of his other books, is like he gives you the perspective of a creature or a life form that isn't the human experience, and tries to bring that to life and give you some sympathy with what that experience is. And to be honest, I don't know if I've read anything else that does that. I'm sure there is other stuff, but like
undoubtedly, but it felt so unique from my reading experience, and I think it also served as a very good counterpoint to the other bit of the world building in that same novel, which is how the humans have ended up where they are. Hideous, corporate, dystopian, just a night, like exactly the kind of world's worst kind of situation you want humans to be in, where they are commodities pulled out and used, unable to recognize that when they're like, oh, but these aliens, they're all a collective, and it's hideous because some of them just get killed off when they're being picked off. It's like, how do you not see that it's exactly the same thing that's happening to you? It's just that you have individual consciousness, therefore it's even more galling that this has happened to you. Like just a really good way to have that kind of world and then thrust humanity up against it as a comparison to be like, is this what you want? You know, like, why do we see this as so hostile and horrible when the human world and the way that it's arguably going is also awful and bleak?
Yeah. Yeah, loved it. So...
Okay, well, we'll jump... What's your other runner-up?
My other runner-up is... I've got to make a decision here on the fly. I'm going to go with the Fallen Gods trilogy. As a sort of whole.
Yep.
We did 2 of them this year.
Yeah, we did.
We did God Killer in 2024, and then we did
Sunbringer crossed over.
Sunbringer and Faithbreaker, yeah. So I continued to feel like, in fact, I think it was the world building that made me come back and finish the trilogy, because I wasn't massively blown away by Sunbringer as the second book. I felt a bit let down. But the world building was good enough, and to be fair, like, some of the characters were good enough that I wanted to come back. But it just continued to be a really, really incredibly developed world. You know, I think I said on the episode, you know, it's not just the gods and the humans and how they interact. It's the different types of city, the geography, the scenery, the politics, the academia, all of the things that Hannah Kaner did to create this world. And then obviously in Faithbreaker we get to kind of go across the sea on boats, and the world opens up even more, and we get to see more of it. And I just I think Hannah Kaner is probably one of the best out there at building a world, and I'd be quite interested to see what she does next, and whether the world building is just as good.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that world. I mean, I remember very fondly our first reading of God Killer, and just when they go to the towns, they felt all the colours, the smells, the structure of that one that's like over the edge of the waterfall, lovely. And I agree with you, it was entirely the world building that made me come back, because she'd broken apart the characters in Sunbringer, and they weren't having that same kind of interaction that I wanted, that I'd seen in the first one. And the strength of the world building brought us back, and it finished with a real good kind of return to form with Faithbreaker. So good choice. My other runner-up is the world of The Night and the Moth.
Interesting.
But and hear me out. So this is, of course, like, there's a reason this hasn't, like, I had to include it, because there needs to be a discussion about the fact that this love of the world hinges entirely upon my own crackpot theory about the fact that nothing exists. And so if you haven't listened to the episode, the world is so weirdly small. There is no mention of anything outside of those 5 towns. Yeah. And I had this whole theory of, like, there's either nothing outside of it, or there's a whole big something. And, Rachel Gillig has used this to create this kind of like microcosm of power structures, the use of religion, the use of commerce to control people, the idea of them having these kind of like godlike abilities through these single items. I loved it. I thought, like, if this is what I think it is, and there's something more to it, then that's great, and I can't wait to read more. It could turn out she just never ever gave it any thought, and was like, there are 5 towns and they've got this thing, and that's all there is to it. It could be just that. But if it's not, then it's great, and I want to know more about that. So, yeah. But I know it's probably not the most obvious choice.
The way you talk about it reminds me of the olden days, maybe more 2024, where I used to try and come up with theories about what was going to happen in books, and they were always wrong. And I feel like maybe you're just missing that opportunity to have some crackpot theories flying around, because I just can't see it going that way.
That's
but
wild.
That said, I think that it would be great if it did.
Yeah, of course.
I
want so much from that world, and I might give a little look into the next book when it comes out and have a little look.
Yeah, but the writing was very, very good. And that's the thing. Like, she made it easy for someone to say, like, you know what, I'm up for finding out whether this just happens to be like a world in a snow globe, or something like that. But yeah, interesting choice, and very interesting rationale.
And will be proven to be true and correct in the next year when the next book comes out, I'm sure.
Yeah. I'll eat my words. I'm sure. So I have one honourable mention that we won't necessarily discuss, but I thoroughly enjoyed it all the way through, and I think the level of complexity and all of that deserves just a quick mention, which is the Library Trilogy. Yeah. We obviously also did books 2 and 3 of the Library Trilogy this year, and just, you know, a lot of thought had obviously gone into that in terms of all the different timelines and dimensions and all of that kind of thing, and I think we both had a great time
definitely
reading it. So don't want to delve into it, but I think it deserves mention. I have a feeling we might agree on our top world building options.
If it isn't, then I want to know why this isn't in your top 3. Go ahead. What have you put?
So the Black Tongue Thief.
Yeah, of course. Okay, good.
Yeah. So,
all right, this podcast can continue.
Here we go.
Yeah, I mean, as you you own the hardback, and you've probably seen the beautiful world map and the calendar, and which links to the cycles of the moon, the different names of the seasons. Just what a world. And like none of it felt forced. When he's talking about the cities through the poetry at the opening of a chapter, when he's just like wandering off, you got the goblin human world, and the fact that you have an entire loss of a character happening because of the dynamic existing between 2 districts in a single city. Like, how can you not say that isn't a world that is just one of the deepest experiences you've ever read? Like, incredible world building.
But I think the thing I loved was that it worked on that deep level, but it was also like a really fun world as well, with kind of whimsy and the magical stuff. Like I loved the Dead Legs' castle and all the upside down stuff, and just the little bits of magic that made it such a fun and memorable kind of experience. The way that the assassin was inside the cat, and like all of these little things that
because you can have a deep world, but if it's overwrought with lore, it becomes burdened. You know, and that's the thing. It's like a heavy book, and you have to you've got all the glossaries, and you've got an excessive you've got a map. You've got seasons and a calendar, and then it's just so you can contextualize it.
Yeah, it didn't need to become the Stormlight Archive or anything like that. Which actually I can't comment on because I haven't read it. But but I know every book is over 1,000 pages. So
but you don't need the reference material to be this huge kind of additional tome in and of itself. It's just the world, and then you remember so much of it because the world is so enjoyable that you pick up and you carry those details along with you.
Yeah, but the plot also used the world in because I think it's probably the case that lots of fantasy authors in their heads, they've built like an amazing world and it has all these amazing locations or whatever, but it's like, yeah, but how are you going to make sure that that's like relevant to anything? It doesn't, like, the good thing you can say for Rachel Gillig is like, well, if you only needed 5 towns and you weren't going to have time to develop anything outside of that, then I'm glad that you didn't kind of bother with creating some expansive world that we then don't get to see.
So don't even make a reference to another single country, kingdom, anything. Because that's clearly not the point, of course.
Not over it, but obviously Christopher Buehlman did like an amazing job of taking us on a journey throughout that world, and I really, really hope that, and I'm sure you will because of how much you enjoyed this, but read The Daughter's War this coming year, because obviously it takes you to a different part of that world, that map that we didn't go to in the Black Tongue Thief, and it's a very different kind of feel of the book, but it's still like the way he uses the world and the world building is absolutely incredible.
All right, So, moving on to our only negative category for this year's awards, the biggest flop. Now, this was a very solidified 3 for me. I think it's quite inevitable which one's going to be our shared top.
Well, so are you counting books that we didn't finish in this? That was my...
I mean, like, I didn't want to say it, but yeah, I can't help but put it on my top.
Yeah. So my thing is defining a flop. How do I think about it? Is it one that I genuinely expected to be great and then it wasn't, or is it just one that I was like, oh my god, it's dreadful?
I think that's the whole point of it. Like, you're bringing your own interpretation, and you're explaining it by in this discussion. So, what's your first runner-up?
First runner-up is The City of Brass.
Oh yeah.
That it was just that it had the description of it made it seem like it was based in Cairo or Egypt and sort of at the end of the Napoleonic occupation. Which was about the first sort of 20 to 30 pages. Even still, I think it had the opportunity to kind of still be really good, and then it just wasn't. The characters were really, really annoying. The
world building didn't quite come together enough, even though there was so much promise with that. All the different djinn cultures and all those kind of things. This
sort of romance that wasn't really well developed at all,
and then that ending,
and then the trap that we're not quite sure how they managed to have a trap, and then the ending that wasn't an ending. All of it was really disappointing, and I'm just baffled because people put this book on their on their social media. They're like 5-star reads, like blah blah blah. I'm like, what book were you reading? And I don't think it's good enough. Like, even if books 2 and 3 are good, like, it's not good enough to have book 1 of a trilogy be this bad and then be like, oh, it's okay because it gets better. It's like, no, you don't get my attention for another whatever it is 15 to 20 hours of my life based on that. So no.
My first runner-up is The Book of Doors by Gareth Brown.
I've got that on my list as well.
What an annoying concept, completely undermined by the fact that that's a magic system that had next to zero thought given to it.
Yeah.
Like, as we cover in the episode and go back and listen, like, I go into quite a rant about the fact that they didn't need to be books, and the people who are using these books aren't book lovers because they don't interact with these books like they're books. They could literally be a stapler. It would probably even been better if they weren't books. The storyline, the magic, everything would have made more sense if these weren't books and book collectors. Absolutely stupid concept that wasn't fleshed out nearly well enough. Unlikable characters. That blooming, what's his name? Fox of the Fox Library, Drummond Fox. Rubbish character. Didn't really get on with him. There was some of the side characters all right, but like, I wanted to enjoy that book. We love our books about books. So the fact that it turned out to be just this complete waste of time, very disappointing.
Yeah, whilst City of Brass was bad, it doesn't have like standout bad moments to me in the same way that the Book of Doors has these particular moments where it like fully contradicts itself. Yeah. And like I think I made the point in the episode, like Drummond Fox says, like, no one's ever used the Book of Doors before and no one knows how it works, and then he's like, let me show you how it works. It's like, well, how do you know how it works?
Yeah. Like, it's been sitting in your library in that little cupboard for however long. What are you talking about?
And then like the Book of Luck, which apparently gives you luck some of the time but not all of the time, and like when it suits him. The whole she looked over and realised that he loved her thing, which stood out to me as like this kind of eye roll moment. Like, yeah, just massively let down. And yeah, I think more and more when we're doing these recordings, I'm like, what are editors doing when they're reading these books? Are they too nice to say, this doesn't actually make sense, mate? Like,
yeah. It's that core thing of like, a book can take you anywhere, to any time, any place.
Yeah.
Now let's write this really underwhelming story which undermines that concept completely. You know?
the one defense or the one nice thing I'll say for Gareth Brown is he wrote the emotional moments around the main character and a grandfather, I think, really well.
Yeah,
like they were like sort of genuinely touching and moving. So like there's like good bits in it, but you know, not enough to make a good book.
Not to offset that central concept.
Yeah.
So my next runner-up for biggest flop is Catabasis.
That I was going to give that an honourable mention.
Oh, okay, right.
So I agree.
What, again, another one, lots of promise. I was like, oh, doing a PhD thesis is like going through hell. Cool, I'm on board. I've had that experience. Relate to me. And this book went out of its way to make those characters as unlikable as possible, for us to to really stretch out that concept to beyond the point of breaking, so that you're just like, well, you've just filled this out with loads of empty space. Like, you got halfway through writing this book and you realised that you couldn't do the whole multiple layers of hell because it didn't go far enough. So you've just put loads of empty stuff in, and you could have rewritten this. You could have made it a different kind of structured hell. Like we've got. I've had other books that depict underworlds and things like that. Like, just make it your own. It's your own experience. Everyone's hell is personal, and you've tried to lay yours over a framework that didn't hold together. What a stupid decision.
Yeah, I mean, again, this didn't make my top 3, but I totally agree, and I think my main criticism at the time was, what are the editors doing? Like, this shouldn't, there's potential in there. This could have been good, but it needed to go back and have some work. And
because I remember you saying that R.F. Kuang had some real success with previous novels and series.
I've read the Poppy War trilogy, and you would not know that that's the same author. Like, and I get, like, authors want to do different things and, like, try, go in different directions, try different approaches, whatever. I'm not saying that this should have been exactly like the Poppy War, but just in terms of the quality, you wouldn't recognise it as the same author.
Very disappointing.
Yeah.
So speaking of disappointing, our joint winner is the one book that we DNF'd this year.
Yeah.
Alchemized by Sen and Yu.
Yeah. I mean, and I read at least the length of a book before I DNF'd it. But we've actually had a load of people sort of comment on that episode where we explained kind of our experience of what we had read and why we decided not to finish. And I don't think we're the only ones.
Yeah. I think we had some really, really interesting in-depth engagement from a lot of people who, like, even if they liked it, appreciated our points of view. And I really, really like the fact that, people took the time to listen to our opinions, because we weighed up, we said at the start of the episode, we debated how we do this. How hard do we go in on this? Do we just not do this review because we DNF'd? Or do we need to talk about the fact and discuss the reasons why we couldn't finish this book? And I think we made, pretty good choice to really kind of talk about, when you can't finish a book, what are the reasons why? And, we cover them in that episode, so please go back and listen. But, that book had too many flaws to be worth pushing on through such a huge tome.
Yeah, and as someone pointed out, which we were very grateful for, it's nothing to do with any kind of being anti-romantasy. Like, we've delved into romantasy previously in a couple of books and had a great time. We tried to be as objective. We're seeking enjoyment when reading a book ultimately, and neither of us were getting that. But there were also some serious red flags in terms of the content that we read and the direction of travel that it was going in. That's not to judge anyone else. Like, I'm pleased that other people have read that and had a good time with it. But again, I would come back to editing and say I think it's lazy to take what's Sen Yu written as a weekly, monthly serial and then just literally almost like plonk it into a 1,000-page book rather than say actually how it's like. I guess the equivalent is saying like, oh, this is a successful TV series. Wouldn't it be great as a film? Let's just put all of the episodes together and just run it straight through. It'll just be 23 hours of absolute incoherence.
Yeah, as much as, you know, when she was writing it in that more blog-like form, releasing the chapters bit by bit, she had that being a book potentially in mind from the start. It doesn't mean that she's not dealing in two different media. When you're transferring it from serialization online to being a single coherent text, people engage with those books in a different way. You know, like with those texts in a different way. And, you know, you need to appreciate that. You cannot just do a one-to-one translation. That is the same way that people adapt things, like you say, from theatre to TV to film to audio drama. There has to be an appreciation of the way in which the text sits, either physically in the hand or read by the eyes or viewed. If you're not putting that into the consideration, you're not going to do a good translation between those two different versions. And there was no consideration. This felt like a hatchet job where they just smushed it all together. And, you know, it shows. It shows.
You can only think they were so scared of not giving the fan payoff that people wanted, that they just made what I think is like a horrible decision. And I made the point in response to somebody on YouTube. I think it's really sad for Sen Len Yu, because obviously it's like it takes a huge amount of effort and energy to write that, you know, write that volume, and I think it deserved better. And I don't want it to be because we're anti fan fiction as a concept or whatever. Like, I don't have any strong views on that. No. It did slightly change the way I read it, I have to say, once I found that out. But I doubt you could find a book written that hasn't been inspired very much by something else. If you asked any author, they'd say, I read this and I really wanted to write something that made people feel the same way.
I was already not enjoying it when you told me this. Like, and again, I try and go in as blind as I can. We pick books almost at random, sometimes based on the cover, the name, anything. Like, you'll sometimes have an awareness of the bookosphere, you know, there being a bit of a hype about something, but like, I'll go onto a book website or walk into a bookshop and just be like, let's try that, because I don't want to try and be guided by any kind of like what other people are saying about these books. And I really wanted to approach it as open-minded as possible. I was the one who suggested it because I was like, I want to do a big book. Let's choose a big book.
Cheers for that.
Apologies.
You suggested Book of Doors as well.
I did.
Although I've got to take responsibility for City of Brass, so
yeah, that's true. We'll both be making mistakes.
Indeed, yeah, and do you know what? You've got to give things a try. Like that's what like entertainment is all about.
Yeah, it's a misses. So there we go. That was the biggest flop of the year. Probably a bit unsurprising, but you know, when it's a flop, it's a flop.
Yeah.
Right. Biggest surprise. Now, this I think was a very open category.
Yeah,
I'm interested to see what your interpretation is.
Just to clarify, when I suggested this category, I thought it doesn't have to just be one book. Although it can be a book that took you by surprise, you didn't expect to like, or you didn't expect it to go in a certain direction, or it could be a twist in a book, or just any element of a book that we've read that's taken you by surprise. So with that in mind, I guess it's quite a sort of open, an open category in terms of what could come up here, and a very individual thing. So do you want to give me your first runner-up?
I'll go with the more kind of standard one. My first runner-up for biggest surprise is the fact that Hannah Kaner got her shit together enough to make me enjoy the end of the Godkiller trilogy with Faithbreaker. She'd destroyed a lot of goodwill with Sunbringer, and I know we said we wanted to finish the trilogies, some of the trilogies that we started, and I'm glad that we did, but I wasn't actually that hopeful going into it. So I was really surprised that I actually, you know, ended up really enjoying that trilogy and have a lot I forgave a lot of the faults of Sunbringer, knowing how it came together.
Yeah,
it's a good example of how you finish a trilogy, but also a lesson of how you can mess up a second book.
Yeah, and we talked at the time, didn't we, about how potentially this could have been a duology, and really kind of packed some of the stuff together, cut some of the stuff out that didn't work, and given us that kind of tempo pace that we wanted to carry through from Godkiller. But yeah, interesting one. And a good one, I think, as well. So my first runner-up is The Great Leap by Dan Hanley.
Was that this year?
That was earlier this year. So we didn't do a review of it, to be fair. We interviewed Dan, who is a self-published fantasy author. The Great Leap was his debut novel, which we read before discussing it with him on the episode. And it's the first self-published book I've read. I don't know about you. And I think
first fictional self-published book. I was once given a history book by an old eccentric that was very clearly self-published.
but then I guess that kind of idea in your head is perhaps maybe what, if you haven't read self-published stuff before, you might carry into it thinking like, oh, I'm going to set the bar quite low here because I don't know what to expect. And actually Dan had written like a really, really good story that I really enjoyed. And I thought it was, I guess it took me by surprise because I wasn't sure what to expect. I guess a little plug for Dan. He's just released book 2 in that series. And I will be purchasing it in the very near future to read, albeit there's no audio book yet, and I don't know when I'm going to get round to reading a physical book.
You have to use your eyes.
I have to put the baby down in order to read the book. But yeah, like I'm looking forward to seeing where that story goes, because we had a really great conversation with Dan, and it was a really good episode.
Book. Man, the way that there was some brutal stuff in that book. Really interesting stuff. Yeah, good choice. Very good choice. And I agree. Like I hadn't known what to expect. Like you say, it wasn't necessarily setting the bar low because it's self-published. More the case that I didn't know what to expect. Yeah. And so I was surprised by what I read. My second runner-up is one I've already talked about a little bit, which is How Much I Like the Night and the Moth.
That's my second runner-up as well.
Really?
Yeah.
That was a good book. For clearly different reasons. You don't buy into my world building theory. But
nothing to do with your world building theory. I just thought it was really, really well written. I thought it was, and I've said several times, I think that it being pitched as romantasy is doing it a bit of a disservice, because as we know, that genre is very much pitched at a female audience, and there is zero reason why any male reader wouldn't have a really great time reading Rachel Gillig's The Night and the Moth. I thought the writing was very good, funny. Obviously it had one of my favourite characters, Bartholomew, in there, who throughout was just an absolute joy. And it's my second runner-up as well.
Great. Oh, that's nice. I have a quick honourable mention. I didn't put this in my top 3 because, as you'll see with my winner, I didn't want to pull from the same book series for my two of my surprises. But my honourable mention is Carlotta being a ghost queen. In the book They Held a Heart, when they find out what happened to Carlotta, and they're just like, oh, she's a ghost who's married a king, and everyone thinks the king's mad because he can see ghosts. I was just like, that's stupid and fun.
Yeah, totally unnecessary.
Was the book That Held Her Heart actually a comedy book and we just didn't realise because of all the bleak stuff happening? Because we keep talking about how like the fun bits were in it, and because that was great. That was a great stupid little thing.
It's interesting, isn't it? Like that type of thing in a book where you're like, if we'd never heard mention of Carlotta ever again, would anybody have noticed? No. But the fact that they have that statue to her that they find obviously like thousands of years in the future, they're like, look, that looks like Carlotta, and then they like, it keeps going back to it. So great mention. So, do you want to do your...
Yeah, okay. So it's also from the book that held her heart, and this isn't a book itself. This is an event in the book that I was just like going, God, that's a really good kind of like realization. It was that the Gnar created the Skier, and like the revelation of how that shifted my perspective from the Gnar being these like really kind of sympathetic race of people. It's like, oh, everyone's as bad as each other, because the Skier are the most kind of like terrifying creatures. Like they're so unknowable. Also, the fact they rise up eventually, clearly, and destroy their creators. The fact that the Gnar haven't learned from the lessons of the past; they're driven by the spite, and when you learn out how they made them as well, like viewing through that weird hybrid creature that's like creating them. Oh, awful. And it was one of the bits of that book that really stuck with me. It's been like, oh, they're monsters. Like, if I didn't know what I knew, I just automatically think the worst of the Gnar. But like, God, yeah, that was my biggest surprise.
Yeah, the cute little furry creatures can also be terrible and evil.
Yeah, it's like, why have you enslaved the Muppets, you monsters? Oh, they could be just as bad. All right, Muppets are evil.
Yeah, that's a great shout. So my number one surprise is it's actually two parts of the same two things from the same book. So I'm once again bending our non-existent rules.
Unacceptable.
So Lady Macbeth.
Oh yeah.
By Ava Reid. So as a general, I just it took me by surprise how much I really, really loved reading this book. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. Unlike anything else we've read, you know, a kind of response to Shakespeare, with more of a fantasy element. And I guess my kind of surprise within the surprise was the fact that there was a dragon in it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that I just didn't even throughout. I didn't see it even when there was all the references to Lysander being, you know, having something different about him. I just thought, oh, he's just going to be kind of magical in the same way that Lady Macbeth is. Yeah, they've changed his name and whatever. And then he turns into a dragon. I was like, oh, okay. And you were saying you thought it was going to be a werewolf, which on reflection I can definitely see that could have been a direction that it could have gone. But yeah, great. Loved it. Loved the depiction of Macbeth himself as this kind of enormous, you know, terrifying presence in everything that he does, and I've been kind of a little bit evangelical about it, going around telling, especially people that I know aren't massively into fantasy, but are, you know, that they do like their classics or Shakespeare or whatever. I'm like, you know, have a read of this because it's an interesting kind of more, you know, feminist, I guess, take on, or would we call it feminist, or just a female perspective on something that, you know, made it. I just loved it. And I would read something similar to it again, I think, just because I was really surprised by kind of knowing what the plot is. I felt made it really easy to get into and just like really sort of immerse myself in the characters and the detail of what was going on. So yeah, anyway, I'll stop evangelizing.
That bloody dragon.
Yeah.
So, onto the big main category of our awards. Overall best book. I wonder how much overlap we'll have. But yeah, you go ahead. Your first runner-up.
So my first runner-up is The Devils by Joe Abercrombie. I've made no secret of how much I enjoy Joe Abercrombie's writing, and it was really great to have him do something outside of the First Law world. You know, he has written a series outside of the First Law world before, which I also really enjoyed. It's more of a young adult thing with kind of Norse setting, I guess. But obviously he's really well known for that First Law World, where there are 10 books currently out, and it's incredibly kind of grim, dark stuff, whereas this was a lot more we joked, I thought it was grim but not dark, and you thought it was dark but not grim, or vice versa. But I guess that doesn't really matter. It's just, it felt like a little bit more fun, felt very cinematic in the way it was written, and
the film rights have already been picked up by someone, haven't they?
I
think, is it James Cameron?
Yeah. Someone absolutely.
Not a shock. Not a shock that this is going to get turned into a film. No,
and because when we reviewed it, we were literally saying, like, it feels like this was written to be on the screen. Yeah, even the way that the scenes that he writes next to each other kind of really work well together.
Yeah, I one of my top 3 books of the year. I think, like you were saying with the setting, how he shifted it, and it's this Mediterranean, Byzantine kind of vibe instead of the more Norse, Anglo-Saxon kind of perspective. It moved at such a pace. It's a chunky book, but like, I tore through this book because every single character, every single event just made me want more. I wanted to see how it ended. I think the only thing that stopped it from being perfect was I felt like some of the final battle went on just a little bit long. There was a bit of a kind of a loop-de-loop going around. They're all just running around, and probably could have tidied that up, but like, loved it. Really great book, absolutely, really good choice, and that's why it's also in my top 3.
Okay.
So my second runner-up is Shroud by Adrian Tchaikovsky.
I'm surprised that you put Shroud in there. I didn't necessarily get the feeling that you'd absolutely loved it when we reviewed it.
I keep thinking about it. Like, it's another one of those books that I was just like it definitely isn't a perfect book. Again, like, it's not like necessarily a 5 out of 5, but it stuck with me. I really enjoyed the metaphors, as I was saying, of the world building. All really, really enjoyable. I liked how brutal it was. It was unrelenting, claustrophobic, tense. The characters developed in a really interesting way where I was like, I said the first bit felt really rushed, but it kind of makes sense. And then when it opens up, once they land on Shroud, it kind of justifies the start of the book because that's how the humans are just operating. And if you think about how he tells the story of how, the shrouded creature itself, how its own storytelling becomes more and less complex depending on what it's doing and how it's operating. The humans are just the same. The parallels between the two halves of the sets of characters just really benefited from me having that kind of time to reflect upon the book and really think about the depth and what it was saying. So yeah, there you go.
Yeah, really, really interested that you said that. I know I obviously loved Shroud and have read, I don't know, 4 or 5 Adrian Tchaikovsky books this year, and I am a fan. I really struggled to nail down 2 runners up. So I'm not going to go into necessarily honourable mentions, but I might just list the ones that just didn't quite make it, and then I'll mention my my last runner up. So the ones that didn't quite make it were Shroud was on my list. The book that broke the world. Hold on.
That's the middle one.
That's the middle one. Yes, that's right. Yeah. Sorry, I was mixed up with it.
There's a lot about that trilogy. The strongest book is the second one.
I loved it. Yeah, it's weird. The more I thought about it, the more I just really, really loved that second book. And then Lady Macbeth, which obviously I've just talked about how much
I was expecting that to be in your top 3, if I'm honest.
Yeah, it was incredibly close, but my second runner-up goes to The Great When by Alan Moore. Just absolutely, just loved it, and it's got that sort of urban fantasy thing that I think I really like. Obviously, I'd recommended Rivers of London stuff to you, and it's very much a sort of similar feel.
I would have put in Rivers of London if we were doing the retrospective ones. Yeah. But that's not how we were approaching it. And I didn't want to bend the rule quite that much because that is very much a kind of, for a slightly different formatted episode. I agree with you, that kind of stuff. But Great When, great choice.
Yeah. And again, I think maybe I heard something about him releasing the next book next year. So we might be able to follow up.
Schedule's filling up fast.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, loved it. We've already talked about it a bit earlier in the episode, so we don't need to go too much into it. But obviously, it had this really bizarre sort of, alternative London thing that really messed with your head.
In terms of like also a bigger surprise, the revelations around when you kind of like that dawns on you that the lawyer friend is the killer.
Yeah.
But like, just like, oh, that's great, that's so sinister.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, loved it, really enjoyed that. So now again I've got a feeling we may be in agreement on our book of the year.
Yeah, probably. I mean, if it isn't The Black Tongue Thief, I will be very surprised. Yeah, there it is. There it is. There's that guy. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about that book enough because it's come up in multiple of our awards and lists. But great book.
Close to perfection, I think, was how I described it in the episode. And just ticked so many boxes. Yeah.
As much as it kind of like fulfilled so many of the standard fantasy tropes, it also elevated, changed them, and threw in some new ideas as well. It's kind of everything you could hope for a book that feels fresh while existing in a world that's entirely instantly recognizable as a fantasy world.
Yeah, and funny throughout.
Great,
really
emotional,
really funny.
Really interesting set pieces. And the world building. Obvious choice for the both of us. I will be reading The Daughter's War next year at some point in between all the other books we were booking up to read for the next year. But incredible. So there you go. That's all of our awards given out for 2025. Now, look ahead to 2026.
Yeah.
Some kind of goals, ideas, what we want to do for the
New
next
Year's
year.
resolutions.
Some might say. What's on your list?
So I had this thought in my head that it might be fun at some point, and we've kind of done a little bit of this kind of with recommending our favourites to each other, but maybe attacking some of like the classics of the genre and like reviewing them in the way that we review our usual books. So whether that's something as classic as Lord of the Rings, or we've had other suggestions like Malazan and things like that. Or they're all just a bit scary because they're usually like 10 books long. If you get into the series, you got Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time or Robin Hobb's, Realm of the Elderlings, things like that, where whilst they're not new, they could be fun. I don't think it's something. I think obviously if we committed to doing that too much, we wouldn't have time to read anything else. Like if we read 24 books this year, like let's say we do an episode every 2 weeks for 2026, we'd still only have time for 26 books.
Well, 25 if you include the all important end of year review episode.
Exactly. So you'd only just finish, I don't know, the Realm of the Elderlings and
I think we should definitely try and pick up one. A classic series that neither of us have touched upon would be a really good idea.
Or that we're both rereading, I guess, would be the thing that. So Lord of the Rings might be something like that. But
we could do it rather than one of our. We've recommended it to the other person. Either we're both rereading a book we're both very familiar with, or. I mean, I am. Like I say, I'm very tempted to do a trilogy or a series that's huge and neither of us touched, because I saw it in the comments about Malazan.
Malazan,
I was like, never heard of that.
Yeah.
Which again, I think shows my level of pedigree when it comes to fantasy knowledge. But like, because I'm sure it's a huge series. But like,
10 books, I think.
10 books.
I don't know if they're still going or whether it's finished or what. I mean, I'm always that's my always caveat thing is like, I don't like starting big series if they're not finished, because I'm terrified that they won't ever get finished. And
George R.R. Martin.
Exactly, yeah.
But yeah, I like that as a goal. We should try and touch upon some of those. One of mine is to correct a wrong from 2025. I want us to read a book that is over 1,000 pages long and finish it. Like,
we could maybe kill two birds with one stone with these goals, couldn't we?
Yeah, exactly. That could be a good crossover because when I text you and say I've chosen the book that's going to be a big one, this is going to be it, and to be so crushingly wrong, I need to set that right. That kind of hurt when both of us were texting going like, "Oh, we're not going to finish this," and I was like, "Yeah, I really wanted to push on, but I just can't." So let's find another 1,000-pager. I hope it could be another new one come out of the blue that's just a big old book and we'll love it and no one will have heard of it and we can trumpet how amazing it is. So.
Yeah, well, there's always something in the pipeline in the fantasy genre, isn't there? That's like the next thing that's really hard work for you to get through. It's like like what the genre prides itself on. But yeah, I think those are two good goals for the podcast.
I think one of my other ones is romantasy remains a big genre, and the bits of romantasy we've touched upon this year were a bit light on the romance side of things. Like Night in the Moth, we both talked about, really enjoyed it, but like not much sexy time.
No. And I was reading at the same time. I was reading Best Served Cold by Joe Abercrombie. And there's way more like graphic sex in that than there was in The Night in the Moth. And no one's calling Joe Abercrombie. Here's a question. Maybe it's a question for another episode. Does romantasy have to be written by female authors? Is that one of the sort of defining features of the genre?
I wouldn't think that that's an explicit one, but kind of implied because of like the audience it's aiming for and therefore the perspectives it's offering.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm sure there's. I mean, again, how hard is it to market when you've got like a bloke writing a romantasy novel? Anyway, I mean,
but it's just strange in terms of like the content of books, like that example I've just given. No one's having a conversation around the boardroom with Joe Abercrombie, being like, what should we market this as? Shall we put it?
Maybe it is just that. It's like, a woman's written a fantasy novel. Well, romantasy, yes. Like.
Oh God! Imagine if it is that. That would be so sad. To be fair, that's what it feels like they did with Rachel Gillig. So
exactly.
So
but if we want to find one that is a male author as well, we could try and get a different perspective by having queer romantasy. Something like that.
Yeah.
So, I think just generally in terms of reading stuff, I want to do more Rivers of London. So you've opened that door, and I want more.
Yeah,
so
I've already cracked on with the series. It was such a treat to go back to it. Rereading stuff is something I've very rarely done, and yeah, like I think it's better the next time. Like you can really focus in on the little details that make it so good when you're not having to worry about what the destination is. So yeah, I'm up for discussing more Rivers of London with you anytime. But also, as we've demonstrated this year, if you get in the comments and make a recommendation to us, then we will look it up and see if we can find a way to include it in our schedule. We had Rachel Gillig as a recommendation after we did The Serpent and the Wings of Night. So someone listened to that episode and said, "Oh, you should do a Rachel Gillig book." So we did that, and we may even have some more that other people have recommended to us in the pipeline over the next few episodes. So do get in touch with us in the comments. Let us know what we should read in 2026. Let us know what releases you're excited about that are coming out that we might not even be aware of in 2026.
As we've made clear, we're not aware of much. Absolutely, if you've got your finger on the pulse and want us to have a read of something, and give us a heads up of when it's coming out so we can plan our episodes ahead, because as we said, things are filling up fast for the early months of the next year. So
so if you do want to get in touch, then social media is at Escapists Anonymous Pod, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, or obviously leave a comment down below if you're watching on YouTube. Like and subscribe. Thanks ever so much to everybody who's commented on recent episodes and all the people that have subscribed. We love the comments. We will always reply that. And
we would also love to hear what your tops of these categories were, because I'm sure a lot of you are voracious readers. So what were your top 3 books? Who were your best 3 characters? Like, what were your biggest surprises, biggest flops? Let us know.
Indeed. in the next episode, so moving into 2026, we are going to do some sci-fi techno thriller, like excitement, I hope.
That's what it sounds like. That's what it sounds like. I've got it here, ready to start reading. Dissolution by Nicholas Binge. I'm going to start reading that in anticipation of telling you our thoughts about it in the next year.
Yeah. And so join us for that. If you're watching in real time, get reading. And we will always be appreciative of having you with us on these episodes, and hope you have a wonderful festive season and new year, and we look forward to having you with us in the next episode. So all that's left to say is goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me. Ho, ho, ho.
Ho, ho, ho.